Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie, and I'm a publisher at Red Penguin Books, where we publish books of all types and genres. So whether you have a manuscript ready to go, a book still stuck in your head, or even 200 pieces of loose leaf shoved in a drawer. And yes, I do receive envelopes of loose leaf. Fortunately, I have a wonderful typist here. But visit us at redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. I am beyond thrilled today to be joined by three authors who have completely unleashed themselves. Elizabeth Lavender is the author of The Spinning of Deception. It is book one of the Sunspear series. So we're going to be excited to meet Elizabeth and hear more about the book and the series. And wow, that is some heck of a cover there. DC Gomez is the author of A Desperate Cat Lady. This is book two in the Cat Lady series. So I was so thrilled to have her on with book one, now book two, and quite the award-winning book. And as a cat lady myself, I'm all about that. And then finally, Maggie Smith is the author of Truth and Other Lies, 3 Women, 2 Secrets, and 1 Lie. But we'll start with Elizabeth. And Elizabeth writes of The Spinning of Deception. 18-year-old Dante refuses to let evil conquer the galaxy. And the fact that his own father acts as the instrument of a dark lord's unrelenting destruction only makes it harder. But when Dante learns a mysterious warrior has strange visions of his family, he discovers she may hold the key to defeating his father. As sinister attacks threaten more and more planets, he fears their purpose is to prepare for an ultimate showdown. But with clues scarce and the girl's mission to help him turn deadly, Dante might be running out of time before those he swore to protect are doomed. Can the young hero unravel the mystery and win freedom for the universe? The Spinning of Deception is the first enthralling book in the Sunspear science fiction fantasy series. If you like epic tales of battle against darkness, intriguing characters, and dangerous adventures, then you'll love Elizabeth Lavender's star-spanning saga. Please welcome author Elizabeth Lavender. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, love that blurb. Boy, if that doesn't make me want to buy the book immediately, that's for sure.
That is certainly what I'm hoping.
That's fantastic. So tell us a little bit about what inspired this book. This is a heck of a story. It sounds like you had a nightmare one day, woke up and started writing.
No, actually, that's not the case. I really just, it's one of those cases where it's a story that had been spinning around in my head for some time, probably about 20 years, and more pieces of it just started getting filled in. The 2 main characters, Dante and the girl, as she's called for basically 2 books in it, those characters came together, but more and more scenes, I found that I had whole scenes that started building up in my head. I had dialogue going, and there was finally a point where it's just like, I need to just write this down. And I basically just did that, started doing that one day, and I was like, let me just start writing the story out and see where it goes. And before I knew it, I literally had the first 2 books written. Wow. And I was like, wow, I can't do like this whole book and like put it out, because as being a new author, was like, nobody's going to read a 400 and something page book at once. And so I found a place to split it. And so I published the first book, The Spinning of Deception, and then I published the second book, Deception Told, and wrote the third book, and I'm working on the 4th book now. So yeah, it's just one of those cases when you have the story in you and you start writing it, you just can't not write it, because it's there. It's like in your head, and it's the writer's passion that once, like you were saying, once it's unleashed, there's a point where the characters basically beg you to tell that story because it's not even your story anymore, it's their story and you have to tell it. So
I love the way you worded that. And people who haven't had that experience of writing, of feeling like there are people who need to have their story told. And it's not just you, it's not you, like you said, it's that your characters needed to have
yes.
their story told.
And it's pretty cool because you get to a point, well, at least I've gotten to a point where I don't even feel like I'm writing the series anymore. I feel like the characters are writing it. So there are points to where, I mean, I know where the story is going and I know like how it's going to end. And I know there's events that have to take place in the middle of it where I need to go with it. But there's times that I'll put my characters in a position and I'm like, wow, like, how am I going to get them out of this? But I already know how they're going to get it out because the characters are like, well, this is how you get me out of this because we've been together for so long. This is what I would do in this situation. And so you come out of it and you're like, oh, well, yeah, that's how that comes together because they already know, like, you've been with them so long. So they really do, to a point, write the story. So sometimes you step back and you're like, you're even surprised how it unraveled. So it's pretty cool feeling.
I was going to ask you if you were ever surprised, if you were like sitting there and you're like, no way, is that going to happen?
Yeah, well, I've never had it to where like I had a character die and I was like, I didn't see that coming, but I have had scenes that have unfolded that I'm like, oh yeah, of course, that's how I'm going to get them out of that situation, you know? So yeah, it's been like that. I have had that. So
Very cool. Tell me about your writing technique. Do you just get drawn to that computer every morning and you have to write? Do you set aside time? How long does
you know, I have to be very forgiving with myself because I actually work full time as a counselor. I have a master's in counseling. And so that actually kind of bleeds into my writing because there is a lot of deception and there's another element besides the sci-fi and the fantasy. There's kind of a psychological, I guess you would, some people call it kind of a supernatural background to it that runs through the series. And so we have a lot of like the Dark Lord, that's his big thing, that he plays with people's mind, that he can turn truth into falsehood. And so I use a lot of my counseling in with that because I'm able to do that, play with that. So I work full time during the day as a counselor. And so when I come home, depending on what's going on, because I have two sons and they're into stuff, like one of them's in soccer. So sometimes we have soccer practice, we have a soccer game. So I've learned to be very forgiving of myself. I usually do all my writing in the evenings, and it's not unusual for me to be up till midnight during the weekdays. On the weekends, 3 and 4 in the morning because I'm a night owl. So, which sometimes can be very bad for my characters because I can put them through a lot because you tend to get some ideas in your head of like what you can put them through because it tends to come out on you, you know. But so far they've survived. I mean, they're sometimes barely, but you know, but that's usually my routine, that usually between the hours of 9 and 12 in the evenings. And then on the weekends, it's like I said, I'm up to like 3 and 4 in the morning.
wow. Wow.
Yeah, but I'm good because I'm a night owl, like I said. So so that's usually my process but like I said, there's some nights that I don't get a chance to write it all because depending on what's going on. So I'm not one of those people that's like, well, I need to get this many words in, or I need to write for this many hours because it's just not feasible sometimes. But once I do start writing a scene, I'm totally in it. And I find that whatever I do get written is very productive because when I look back on it, I'm like, okay, that scene was like really cool. That came together because like I said, I don't feel like I'm even writing it anymore. Like the characters write themselves. So, so that's kind of my process as far as like, I don't have a word count and I don't have a time frame. I can't do that to myself. As far as like my process too is I know there's some people that plot out like every scene, and I can't do that. I know, like I said, I know that there's a definite place that I need the story to go. I know how it's going to end. I know that there's things about the girl that I only know, which is why she's called the girl for 2 books. There's things about her identity. And I know that I have to leave basically little breadcrumbs and scenes that kind of point when later on it's going to become clearer. There's events that have to happen to get me to the final thing. But as far as like, this chapter is going to say this, I can't do any of that. Like, I wouldn't even know how to do that. So.
I love what you have said. So many huge takeaways here. One, that you're, full-time worker, mom, and still putting out these fabulous, huge fantasy books. But I especially loved you're talking about being forgiving of yourselves. I think sometimes we are our own worst enemies. And you are getting it done. You are getting so much done, and yet you have that feeling of self-care and being kind to yourself, and that's huge. Elizabeth, where are you from? I love your accent.
I'm actually live in Texas, but I'm originally from the Alabama coast. That's where I lived all my life. I really miss it, honestly, because there is no water around where I'm at.
Oh, where in Texas are you?
I'm in what's called Waxahachie, Red Oak area, but it's about 30 minutes from Dallas. Most people, everybody knows where Dallas is at. But yeah, I'm originally from the coast, Alabama coast. It's a place called Fairhope, but it's about 30 minutes from Gulf Shores, other side of Mobile, Alabama. But yeah, and that is one of the things that I kept in my books. I don't transport a lot of stuff from my personal to my book, but the love of the water that I put for Dante and the girl, that is something I did transfer directly from my world, because I wanted them to love the water.
Awesome.
Because one of the things I miss about being near the water, it always has a calming effect. I mean, it wasn't like being in the water and stuff, but I found that no matter what was going on in my world, I could go and take a walk on the beach and it would just clear my head. And so I do miss not being.
Well, we're going to hope that you
water.
get a chance to visit some water.
I do. We usually go once a year at least for the holidays, and we try to go another time. So, but
awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Our next author, DC Gomez, is the author of A Desperate Cat Lady, which is book 2 in the Cat Lady series. And the author writes, "A boring life is not in Angela's future, with her being a black market guns dealer. Tripping over a dead body is now bringing a lot more attention from law enforcement than she cares to have. If only she could get control of the Silver Hair Gang and their quest to find the killer themselves. Angela is running out of time to secure her next arms deal and save her family from an unknown killer. A Desperate Cat Lady is book 2 in the contemporary humorous fiction series, The Cat Lady. Angela's life drastically changed when she transitioned from a depressed cat lady to an arms dealer. Now she is willing to take on the world to protect her family and her empire." Please welcome author DC Gomez. So thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. So it's such a pleasure to be here, and so exciting to have other authors on the show. Hello, Elizabeth. Hello, Maggie. Nice to see you guys.
So the response from A Desperate Cat Lady or book 1 was such a hit. She's going on.
It is absolutely such a crazy, wild adventure. So I usually tell people I do cute with an attitude, and this is one of those books that's completely going to change the way you see, cat ladies as a whole. Elizabeth, you're from Texas. I'm actually in Texarkana, so we're about down 30 from each other. So Texas is a huge place, and it's interesting because it has so many small towns. So Cat Lady, I had to make up a really small town to make this fit into this bubble. So it's a town of like 175 people in Texas, which happens a lot. I didn't realize that how many small towns we have. So we're going strange and wild for this one. So it's really fun.
I love, first of all, Texarkana is the one place in the world that you know exactly where it is by the name. Border of
Where
Texas and Arkansas.
when I first moved here, I thought they were joking. I was like, really? This is really the name? And then there's two of them. There's one on the Texas side and one on the Arkansas. And I was like, really? Is that a thing? So it's a twin city between two states divided by the state line. And that's the name of this line. I was like, we take these things very literally, guys. Like we could kind of get
Very
a little bit
literal,
more. No, we're going to milk these names to the core.
It's like they had a meeting and couldn't decide on the name. So they went with Texas. It could have been Architects or something, but Texarkana was a good choice there.
It won.
So how much of this is, shall we say, personal? Arms dealer, cat lady. I mean, they say write what you know. What do you know?
I might have to have disclaimer. So one of the questions I get a lot from readers, like, how many cats do you have? I was like, one, literally, just one. But I have a lot of cats in many of my books, so it becomes a running joke that I have gone with it. So she has two cats named Bonnie and Clyde. Why not? She's in Texas. So, and they're as wild as you can get for anybody who has a cat. It's like trying to control the water. You're not going to win. They're going to do whatever they want every single time, and they're going to look at you like you're crazy.
Absolutely.
So yeah, anybody with a cat or has been around a cat realizes like my mom wants me to like train my cat, and I look at her like, okay, I'll let you know when that happens. So how much of Angela's in me? When I first wrote Cat Lady, Desperate Cat Lady, the very first scene was something very different. I'm known for writing urban fantasy. I have magic and we're gonna have explosion and wild, and this is straight contemporary. I told everybody nothing's gonna save you. There's no magic to save you in this book. It's just as real and brutal as it get. And I've been doing romance convention. So I was the only author here without a romance book. So I set out on this 5-hour drive back home that I wanted a romance book. This is why we're going to do the Cat Lady. And this is what I came out. And everybody's like, that's not technically a romance book. I was like, she loves herself. It's like, it doesn't work that way. So I have failed drastically, but the adventures of it is very woman binding in terms of very liberating. It's very sister focused, but it's a lot more about self-redemption. It's about forgiving yourself and where you're at in your life. It's about looking at yourself and realizing sometimes you're not going to do stuff to save yourself, but you're willing to give your life for other people. And that's what Angela is. So this insane adventure of this girl, and I say girl, she's 45. That's when I realized I was hitting middle age, when I'm like, oh my God, I'm in my 40s. I'm Angela. So we have age similar, but it was finding that strength to say, I'm going to fight for the people I love because nobody else is. So this is where I'm at in my life. So she became that very raw person in my character. She's that one that, she's just trying to hold life together and life just keeps beating her up. Book 2, because everybody's like, so when is the next one coming? I'm like, next one? What? There's a next one? What? So Cat Lady, a Desperate Cat Lady is, where do you take this adventure? Where do you take this madness? And I have been, once again, I keep going to these romance conventions and, wild conventions that have nothing to write about. So a Desperate Cat Lady, to some extent, was going to be a tad bit erotica. Once again, failed miserably. Very little. I was like, I'm really bad at picking these genres and sticking. I was like, yeah. So you get a little bit of the dark currents of possible small towns of people who are trying to live an alternative lifestyle. And Angela just can't do it. But she gets stuck in a murder mystery. So it's very cozy mystery with a whole bunch of cross genres and a bunch of shenanigans. And then you have old ladies selling guns. So come on now, like it's going to be a wild ride.
I have to ask, is there like a romance convention in Texarkana and you just keep going because you can't find one about fantasy, urban fiction, cozy mystery? What is it?
There's actually not one in Texarkana at all. I get invited. Like I went to Delightfully Dirty in Dallas, which was amazing. And once again, I don't have a romance book, so whatsoever. At all. I'm always that like odd author that anybody who can't find the romance book, or like they bring their mom or their, as they call their husbands or partners who like she's there for moral support. I always get them. Like I get all the little stragglers. They're like, there's no naked person in your covers. And I'm like, sorry that I don't have that book. They're like, oh, good. Can I talk to you? You look safe. I was like, thanks. I think. I know. I have that look like, I don't know if I should be offended by this comment, but okay. So no, I travel a lot. I have amazing author friends. I have amazing coordinators that put incredible conventions together. And they're like, hey, DC, you want to come? And normally I say yes before checking like the bottom line, like really who the focus is. And then when I get there, I was like, one of these people does not look like the other. I mean,
You are so incredibly prolific. I'm afraid I'm going to go to like a spirituality book convention. There you're, yup, you're going to be there.
I actually can actually go there and be legit. I have devotionals. I can pull that one off. That one I can blend in really well. I'm like, yeah, I got this.
Okay, what
All
about a
the other ones,
cookbook?
like,
Did you write a cookbook too? Because you know,
I want to. I so do. I want to be a foodie in my other life. I just want to do. I have told everybody like I need to do because a lot of my books are urban fantasy. So it takes place in Texarkana in Texas.
right.
So I like my theory is
Yeah.
I'm going to do like a guide to Texarkana and the food world. So I can go to these places, take pictures of the food and be like,
Like that. Ooh.
wouldn't that be amazing? And do it through like my character's eyes, like, you know, what like the talking cat wants to do and just take food. So according to everybody, it's like you just want to eat and call it a business trip.
What's bad about that? Is it
Thank
a
you, see?
is it a write-off? That's all I want to know.
It is, absolute. And if I can publish it, you know, Elizabeth and Maggie are both agreeing with me, like, trust me, if we could honestly go to all of your favorite places and be like, I'm doing research and then just take a picture, be like,
I'm all about it. I am
it would be amazing.
so all about it. Okay, so
So-
all of our viewers, DC Gomez is willing to go to any of your conventions. Doesn't
Call me.
matter what the genre is. Call her. If there's good food, if you know
That's
whatever.
a plus.
And afterwards, she will write a book that does not match your genre at all. She'll be at a table that the books don't match anything else, and she will be knocking it out of the park. And that's the fun thing is you are knocking it out of the park.
I'll be smiling like everybody. I'll be smiling with the best of them. I honestly love that. I had an opportunity in April, end of April, to go to Texas Library Associations. And I happened to be like, we were doing the signings and I happened to be in front of Kame Alexander. And he has a line of like, I know he's amazing. He has like 200 people. And I'm sitting here. And one of the librarians was so sweet. She's like, oh, honey, maybe one day this is going to be you. And I was like, I can't see what he's doing behind me. I'm perfectly okay. But it was like 20 people in my line. It's like, I'm loving my line. This world is amazing. So sometimes we spend too much time trying to figure out what everybody else is doing it on is that we will miss our moment. Don't worry what anybody else around you is doing. It's just love that moment and have a blast. And every single person that comes to you that has read your book, love them because they didn't have to. So I love everything I do. So it's fun.
Love that. And that's going to be my huge, big Post-it note takeaway from you is live in the moment, folks. I know that we're all trying to do more and grow. And I'm all about growth and personal evolution, all about it. But don't miss the moment. The moment is now. And that is just so awesome. Not to look at the person next to you and be like, yeah, they got 200 people online.
And that's okay. They're supposed to. That is their moment and living. They have done amazing things. But I think sometimes when we get so caught up in what they're doing, that we forget that there was 20 people, 30 people, whatever amount of people were sitting there to come and watch you. They took their time to come and see you. Enjoy it and love them and treat them like the most amazing thing. Because trust me, every single time, like, can I take a picture? I have mastered that. I was like, let's do that. And I love people. I love my readers. I love anybody who wants to connect. And by being present, I had probably an incredible event. Every time his crowd screamed, I thought we had a fire drill. I was like, should I move? Should I call somebody? Like, is there something I can't see behind? Should I be worried? And then I was like, we all here together. It's not a competition. It's literally an amazing trip. And I'm loving my trip, so I can't complain.
Oh, I love that. I think that's wonderful. So what's next on your agenda? Where are you going? What are you writing? You're conquering the world. What's next?
My next master plan, I have a couple anthologies that I'm working on so that they're due this month coming up. But I actually have book 2 of 2 series coming out. So A Desperate Cat Lady is out the 25th of May, which I'm super excited. So we need to promote Desperate Cat Lady. I need to give Angela some love. So, but I will be having The Traders coming out in September, and I also have Betray coming out in October. So I have back to urban fantasy, back to post-apocalyptic. So anybody who wants quirky characters with an attitude, come and see me. I got you covered.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. I love having you anytime. Our next author today is Maggie Smith, who is the author of Truth and Other Lies: 3 Women, 2 Secrets, 1 Lie. And our author writes, Megan Barnes's life is in free fall. After losing both her job as a reporter and her boyfriend in the same day, she retreats to Chicago and moves in with Helen, her overprotective mother. Before long, the two are clashing over everything from pro-choice to Me Too, not to mention Helen's run for US Congress, which puts Megan's career on hold until after the election. Desperate to reboot her life, Megan gets her chance when an altercation at a campus rally brings her face to face with Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Jocelyn Jones, who offers her a job on her PR team. Before long, Megan is pulled into the heady world of fame and glamour her charismatic new mentor represents, until an anonymous tweet brings it all crashing down. To salvage Jocelyn's reputation, Megan must locate the online troll and expose the lies. But when the trail leads to blackmail and circles back to her own mother, Megan realizes if she pulls any harder on this thread, what should have been the scoop of her career could unravel into a tabloid nightmare. Readers who love Jodi Picoult's topical plot twists and Leanne Muradore's character-driven novels will devour this fast-paced tale of 3 women whose lives converge as one fights a devastating accusation, another campaigns for a contested seat in Congress, and one, the young reporter with ties to both, navigates the tricky line between secrets and lies. Please welcome author Maggie Smith. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, if that isn't the intrigue that we need, I would say this political season, but it seems like every season is a political season.
Yeah, and it's not really about politics. It just has one character that's running for
Absolutely, but it is about, what could happen
issues.
with social media also.
Right.
And that's kind of our world, is we are all, right there on the edge of overexposure, shall we say.
Right, right.
And
Exactly.
that's quite a thing. What got you into this storyline? What inspired this?
Actually, I was following a prompt at a writing workshop, and I love going to writing conferences like DC talks about, and writing workshops and learning things. And the prompt was, I can never write a book about. And I put mothers and daughters because I haven't been a biological mother myself. I have stepchildren. And my mother and I had a very contentious relationship. So I thought that would be a topic I probably should stay away from. And then the instructor, of course, said, why don't you write for 15 minutes about that topic you could never write about? So it is kind of challenging for those writers out there. Maybe the thing that you're backing away from might be exactly where you need to go. And so I still have that piece of paper where I drew 3 concentric circles, and one was mother, one was daughter, and one was mentor. And I think it came out of my own life because I didn't want to pattern myself after my mother. And so in my middle 20s, I was kind of looking around for mentors or role models in the workplace primarily. And like Elizabeth, I was in psychology for a while. And so I had psychologists that were training me. And sometimes they were slightly older women. So I was kind of looking to them to see maybe that's somebody I could pattern myself after. So I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition of, if your mother is not who you want to pattern yourself after, where do you find somebody? And that's kind of the grain that this grew out of.
Absolutely. And then the conflict between mother and mentor. and
Right.
and the explosion that happened with Megan in the middle.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that from a writing prompt.
Yeah. Yeah. And mine, unlike the other two, is really based in real life. These characters are in 2018, so I avoided the pandemic kind of issues. But it's set in Chicago in a real place, and nobody has any magic powers. And but like a lot of people, I make them a little larger than life. So the mentor is not just a journalist, she's a world famous journalist. I tell people it's like she's Oprah or Diane Sawyer, someone that if she walks down the street, people know who she is.
Right, right,
And then the mother is not just running for PTA president, but she's running for Congress.
right, right.
And uh, so, so you kind of amp it up a little bit, make it a
Exactly.
little bit
Well,
more interesting.
I love what inspired this because so many people will say to me, I would love to write. I have no ideas. Where can I get an idea? And the other thing that people say to me is that they'll hear the line, write what you know. And you kind of approach that from the write what I don't know, but turned it into,
I think it should be write what you'd like to know, what
mm,
you'd like to know about, unless you're writing fantasy or something like Elizabeth, but write what you would like to know. And that leads to a lot. Sometimes people love being historical fiction. Mine is women's fiction, but contemporary women's fiction.
right.
But a lot of my friends are historical women's fiction, and they want to know about Clara Barton or they want to know about someone in World War II. And so they go research that, and out of that comes a story, either of someone that existed in real life or somebody that they make up and put in those real life situations. So that's it. And there are, I wrote some things in the book that are very peripheral, like Megan graduated from Northwestern University in Evanston. I went to Northwestern University in the journalism school. So, but that's a kind of a minor thing.
Right.
This
No,
isn't
no.
the story of my mother or my mentor. But those kind of things do come up. And I'm familiar with Chicago. And so that was an easy location to put it.
Exactly. And I love that it's a mother and daughter story for all those mothers and daughters who are not, you
Who
know,
aren't necessarily a love fest.
exactly. Not everything is a love fest out there. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
It
And
seems to divide. It seems like you're very, very close to your mother, or the two of you don't have a really, it's,
right,
I
right. No,
really need
just
somebody that's in between.
apathy kind of a thing going on. But I think that that dichotomy is so true in a lot of things. That people aren't just like, Mexican food, whatever. Like they might,
They either like it or they don't.
they hate it. And
Exactly.
now, do you still live in Chicago?
I don't live in Chicago. I live in Milwaukee, but it's 90 minutes from Chicago.
Okay.
And at various times I have lived in Chicago. So we're kind of like a suburb of Chicago. You can drive down there in
People
an hour
in
and a
Milwaukee that people in
half. Anytime
Milwaukee
you
might
need your
not want,
fix of a big city, you can go down there for the weekend.
and good food.
And we're on the same lake. I'm on Lake Michigan too, just
Exactly.
goes up further.
When you need pizza, just drive south. There we go. So tell me a little bit about your writing. Once you had this experience with this writing prompt and you said, "Ooh, this is where I'm going with it." Did you outline the whole thing? Did you see where it went? Did you write in the mornings, write at night? How did you get this done?
Well, I am not like a lot of writers. I do not write every day. When I started writing, it was only 4 years ago. I had a full-time career before then. I actually started writing while I was still owning a business. And when I sold the business, I then became a full-time writer. But, well, full-time, and I just said I don't write every day. So lots of other things, I guess. So I don't feel guilty about that at all. I am very much of a plotter. I am so very much in the outline basket. In fact, I keep a running developmental synopsis. I'm writing my second book now, and I have probably a 20-page developmental synopsis that has it broken out by chapters of what's going to happen. If I think of something new, I figure out where it's going to go. I think based on this book, because I wrote this book 3 entire times, all the way through 300 pages with totally different stories. And the first time, I can't quite remember what it was. I think it was a woman getting a divorce. I think it was focused on the mother and she was getting a divorce. So I think it was kind of a divorce story. The second time, I'm very clear, it was an adoption story.
Oh,
And the mother found out she was adopted, and it turned out the famous journalist was her birth mother.
oh,
So it was a totally different story. And I had 3 points of view. So the bottom line is I had to write an awful lot that I had to throw away. In fact, a whole book that I had to throw away. And so I didn't want to do that again. so I went to plotting, and now I'm very much of a plotter. And where ideas come from, I mean, I have an idea for a third book that came to me waking up from a dream based on something my stepdaughter had done and said. And I just kind of woke up and thought, oh my gosh, that's a whole novel that has to do with a kidnapping. And so I, have notes on that one while I'm writing the second book. My second book's a psychological suspense, so it involves a lot more planning, maybe a little bit like Elizabeth's because, well, or DC's because she wrote a mystery. I don't feel like I can just kind of pants it because I need to put clues through the thing, and I need to know who the bad guy is, and I need to know how I'm going to find out how the bad guy is. So I'm doing a lot of plotting on the second book.
as a person myself who plots every facet of my life, I love a plotter. I absolutely feel such an affinity towards a plotter. But the thought of throwing away, I mean, two
An
books
entire book.
that, wow, good for you. Here's my thought. How did you know that it wasn't right? Because too many people.
Well, nobody else has mentioned this, but I turned to developmental editors. I had developmental editors that I hired that looked at it. And the adoption story, they said you have one big coincidence that is just too big a coincidence, and buyers will throw the book across them. And it wasn't that the mother was the mentor was the birth mother. It was that the daughter went to work for the mentor, and they said, okay, and that's her grandmother. That's too big a coincidence. And I thought kind of the whole thing rested on that.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I don't know how to do it any differently, and so this is not going to work. And so I will say that when I do write, when I get into a writing spurt, it does help to read because I have the synopsis. I will read what I'm going to write the next day. So I can read that. I tend to write in chapters, one or two, sometimes 3 scenes in a chapter, and chapters about 12 pages long. And so I will read what I'm going to write the next day. And that way I have all that time that I'm kind of brainstorming as I'm going about the rest of my life. I will have some ideas about what I'm going to write the next day.
Gotcha, gotcha. I'm so glad that you mentioned having other people reading. In your case, developmental editors. Other people might have beta readers,
Beta readers.
at least friends or somebody, and how important it is to get an outside opinion, because we are often the worst judge of our own work.
Well, and in my case, this is my first novel, and it's a standalone. So I'm not writing series like these other authors are. And so 4 years ago, I didn't know how to write. I mean, I didn't know how long a chapter should be or point of view or head hopping or any of that stuff. And so I think it's incredibly hard to write a novel. I've done a lot of things in my life. I would consider this the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And it's harder when you're teaching yourself to write. After you've written a few novels like DC, well, then you kind of know all that stuff. But I'm reading craft books along with trying to write, and I'm trying to teach myself to write as well as writing. So I think I was taking on 2 big things at the same time. So I needed all the help I could get. So I was, trading pages with people. I was going to roundtables. I was, submitting stuff. And novels are a little hard to also, I think, workshop because it's such a long form. if you're writing a short story, you can give a short story to somebody, they can read it, they can critique it. But giving them one chapter when maybe they weren't at the round table last month, and so they're going, well, who is this again? Or I'm lost. And it's, well, because I'm writing a novel and this is a long thing. You have to keep it all in your mind. But I did turn a lot to, I belong to a couple of professional organizations, and I turned to them for critique partners and beta readers and things like that.
So Maggie, what made you want to, since this is your first novel, and you said yourself,
I'm a martyr.
what made you decide one day to say, I want to be a novelist? I mean, that's a
Well, I had been a bit of a writer when I was at Northwestern in journalism.
right.
Even though that isn't what I turned into being for a career. I think I just wanted something creative to do, and I can't sing worth a lick. And and I tried painting in college, and I think somebody said, "What is that?" And it wasn't supposed to be abstract. It was supposed to be a pond or something. So I thought, okay, not that. But I do read a lot, and like a lot of people that read a lot, I thought I could write. Who knew?
Wow.
And sometimes I do feel like that I have some natural talent of just putting words together and sentences together just from osmosis of reading thousands of books in my life.
You must be the
And
first
I
one
imagine
like that.
everybody that thinks they are going to be a writer has somewhat that innate ability as well.
Right,
You,
right,
you, you just have that from having read. But then you begin learning the actual rules and the craft.
right,
And
right.
I still do that. I still go to things. I still take classes. Just because I've written one book doesn't mean I know what I'm doing. So
But yes, you are definitely my first guest author who became a writer because she couldn't sing or paint, you know. First time
there's something cool about saying you wrote a book, and the whole posterity. When I die, my book will still be there.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's why I often quote the statistic. Evidently, BookBub or someone did or Book Expo interviewed people, and 90% of the population wants to write a book. Now, here in America, we don't have as huge of a percentage that actually did write the book. Although I just read a recent statistic that Iceland is the most published country, and something like 40% of the population there has published a book. So,
Wow.
Well, lots more people in this country have when you were able to indie publish. I mean,
yes, but
15 years ago when you had to go with the big 5 publishers,
right, but it's
weren't
still
nearly as
more like 1% of our population, if even that, maybe a 0.5% of our population has actually done it, whereas 90%
That's
say
amazing.
that they want to.
Right.
In Iceland, I mean, maybe because it's cold and dark, they actually do. But I will vouch for the 90% because I can't walk into a room and say, hi, I'm a publisher, without a million people coming over and saying, oh, I wrote a book, I want to write a book, I have a book in my drawer, I had a dream about it. But everybody wants to write
Exactly.
a book.
Exactly.
And
Well, but I think I recently did a talk where I researched this, and there are 2,700 new books published every day.
isn't that crazy?
So if we think we're fighting for readers, we are.
700 now, yet I have 2,700 people a day who are talking to me about writer's block.
And they say that's what the difference is between those who get published and don't, is perseverance. It's
absolutely,
just doing it, finishing it.
and it's so interesting of the three of you that you had kind of three different, I'll say, methods of getting it done. Now, one thing, Maggie, that you said that Elizabeth, I jumped all over when she said, which was how forgiving she is of herself. And Maggie, you firmly admit that you don't write every day. I love that.
Nope.
I love that. So GC, are you writing every day?
I don't actually. I'm a binge writer, and it's kind of strange for most people. Maggie can understand. I love people that do. I think it's amazing, but I usually would be. I work well under pressure. So give me a deadline, And this little girl is going to be gone for a couple of weeks writing. But in terms of the actual everyday, I think about my stories. I work a lot on my stories throughout it. But in terms of the actual sitting down and time, I don't. I'm a binge writer. I can admit
I
that.
think that's the difference is what is writing? Is it when you're typing or is it when you're thinking
Yeah.
about it?
You
Because I
write it
think,
in your head.
yeah, 80% of the time it's just when you're thinking through the story. That counts in my book.
It does.
It does. One of the things that a lot of people say that I think is kind of interesting because I get a lot of critiques in terms like, are books quality books if somebody pumps them out really fast? One of my good friends says, there's a difference between how quickly a book is published and the amount of time the author is creating them. Because we'll be sitting thinking about a book literally for years and then just happen to publish back-to-back books. It doesn't mean those books were written
Right.
that way. So the process of publishing and the process of writing and how much time we spend in it. So I'm a little bit more like a little bit Elizabeth, a little Maggie. I am an plotter slash pantser. I plot in index cards. I should buy stocks because I spend that much money on them. And then I'll literally pants in between my chapters. But I do it. It depends on my deadline. So I'm definitely much more of a binge writer. And I'm okay with that. It works really well in my world.
Yeah, well, you know what I love is that you are all three of you respecting who you are as a person and a writer. You're not trying to fight City Hall, shall we say. You're doing what works for you, and obviously it works. We have, three successful authors here, so obviously it is working, but starting by respecting who you are and where your life is. I mean, Elizabeth, you're on the side of a soccer field and you respect that your kids are only going to be this age today. So
Yes.
let's enjoy those soccer games
Yeah.
today. It goes in a blink. And my young soccer star leaves for college in a few months.
Oh, wow.
So enjoy every moment on the side of a soccer field right now.
Yeah, well, that's my 10-year-old. The other one's 15 and he does theater. So we got the whole theater thing going with him. So
Well, and there's also the idea that my book came out in March. Well, for about 3 or 4 months before then, a lot of my time was taken up in marketing it.
Mm,
yeah, that's the other
So,
part of it.
I gave myself full permission to not be writing very much during any of that
right.
because I was writing blogs and I was writing, appearing on podcasts and things like that. And so you're putting effort behind making the book you have already written successful.
Exactly. And you're so right in showing how things take time. I think we've become a very instantaneous kind of a people that everyone wants everything yesterday, but some things like marketing a book, like writing a book, and like being there with your family do take time, and respect that. Maggie, what are you working on now?
I'm working on a psychological suspense. It's tentatively named Blind Spot. And it's a assistant district attorney that's trying to hunt down the person that's stalking her and her daughter. So I've got another mother-daughter, and only to wind up getting arrested when he turns up dead. So that's the beginning of it.
Fantastic. And I know
So
that,
it's much more in the psychological suspense women's fiction.
gotcha. And I know, Elizabeth, you're in the middle of a series.
Yes, I'm on the 4th book right now. So I'm about, I don't know. Like I said,
Are there only going to be 4?
no, there is going to be more. I don't know how many it's going to end up taking. Yeah, no, it's not going to be forever. But like I said, I know how it's finally going to end. I know how that last big battle is going to look like. I know what events have to happen to get me there. So usually I have an idea of, like I said, most people have kind of like a word count they want to get to for each book or something like that. I don't do it like that either. I usually have a point in the storyline that I want to get to finish out a book. So that's kind of where I'm at. And so, I mean, I think I have like 80-something thousand words on the 4th book right now done, but I'm not close to where I really want to be in the storyline to finish that book. So I know where I'm headed to end, like I said, that book. So I know it's going to take at least 6 books, probably more. So
Hey, I would love to remind all of our viewers of your books and where you find them. I would also like to ask you, if I'm shopping right now, who am I buying your book for? DC, I am going to start with you, just to remind all of our viewers to learn more about the plethora of books that are coming out. Please visit dcgomez-author.com. And DC, who should I be buying A Desperate Cat Lady for today?
Anybody, specifically women, if you're interested, who are interested in having some adventures, cozy mystery per se, who love quirky characters, who really enjoy a good time and want to have a little bit of shenanigans without leaving their house. So that's usually the perfect person to buy this book for. Fun, cozy mystery, a whole bunch of action, and a bunch of madness.
Fantastic. You just described people on my list, so I am ready. Maggie, tell us a little bit. MaggieSmithWriter.com is where you can find some more information and sign up for her mailing list. And Maggie, tell us, who should I be buying Truth and Other Lies for?
You should be buying it or suggesting it to your book club
Ooh,
because it has a lot of discussion questions at the back and centers around a lot of things that people are somewhat in disagreement about, and it could provoke discussions.
fantastic. Oh, I have a book club who's in need of a suggestion, so thank you so much. And Elizabeth, who should I buy The Spinning of Deception for today?
It has its realms in sci-fi and fantasy. It has kind of a Star Wars feel to it. So probably anybody that likes the Star Wars world would probably really enjoy this. It kind of has the epic battles and stuff kind of have a Tolkien feel. So anything like that, but it does have the other the supernatural kind of inner battlefield that kind of goes because of the psychology in me. So so somebody that I don't know if you're familiar with like Frank Peretti, Ted Decker. So it has that element in it because of the Dark Lord and the darkness and the lies and the deception. So it plays in that realm too. So it's kind of a mix. So
Okay, thank you. And thank you to the three of you. You're such an inspiration to our readers, but also to our writers out there. And when your next book is released, please join us back here between the covers. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're an author who would be interested in appearing on our show, or perhaps you're a member of a book club, we do host book clubs as well. Please visit BetweenTheCoversTV.com. By the way, at BetweenTheCoversTV.com, you can watch past episodes in addition to learning more about our authors and guests. So sign up there if you would like to be a guest on the show yourself. And if you have some books that you would like to get written or published, visit redpenguinbooks.com. Thanks so much for joining us.